Okay, so today's video is inspired by my sister-in-law Brenda, who is going to prom in just about a month. So I wanted to do a video for her and just for anybody who is a beginner at makeup, maybe who doesn't wear a lot of makeup on a daily basis, but kind of wants to amp up their routine for an event, a night out, for prom maybe, graduation would be also a good opportunity. I'm also going to be showing you some products that I would recommend that you buy if you do not have something like it already in your collection. And I'm again really gearing this towards people who aren't going to be now taking this technique and doing it on a daily basis. So I picked some products that are more mini size, that are more like a travel size product, so that you're not spending a lot of money on makeup that you might only wear like a few times a year. But if you want to amp up your makeup game for your daily makeup wear, this video could also help you. It's just really geared towards anyone who is a beginner. So the first thing I like to do is moisturize my skin. You can also use a primer, but I just like to go in with a moisturizer. I find because of the style of makeup that I do, it's very long wearing. I wear long wearing foundation. I set my foundation with a powder, and I do use a setting spray. And so personally for me, because I do those steps and because I'm already using long wearing products, I do not need to wear a primer at all. Like sometimes I do just to be a little extra, but there's not really many primers, if any, that I notice a big difference with after I use them. So therefore, I just make sure that my eyelids and my entire face is nice and moisturized. Now, depending on how hydrating that is, and this one that I use is hydrating, I might want to let that sit for a little bit just before I start slapping on other products. But this would be a good time to talk to you about some of the products that I recommend you picking up for your special occasion. So, of course, I do recommend a foundation and a concealer. The ones that I'm going to be using today are great for more normal to oily skin. If you're dry, I'll give you another recommendation, but I love that they're from the drugstore, and I have 3 different shades just depending on what time of year it is. This is the Maybelline Matte and Poreless Foundation. Put it up close so you can take a screenshot if you want. Again, normal to oily skin, this is absolutely excellent. Every time I wear this foundation, I get compliments. It is very smoothing. It is mattifying, but it is not too dry. It can be full coverage, so if you need to cover like acne or scarring, or you just want like a full coverage look, especially for like a night out, this is such a good foundation, and it's under $10. The other one that I want to recommend if you are dry is also from the drugstore. It's the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Glow Foundation. I love this one so much as well. Sometimes throughout the year, depending on the weather, I will even mix these two to get like a semi-dewy foundation. This foundation also has great coverage. So if you need something for dry skin, that's what I recommend. I'm more normal to oily, so I'm gonna be using the Matte and Poreless. There's also a nice shade range, so I'm pretty confident at least that no matter what your skin tone is, you'll be able to find a shade that matches you. For concealer, my favorite concealer of all time really is also from the drugstore, so inexpensive for you guys. This is the Milani Conceal and Perfect Concealer. Now, the shade range on this is not as good as I would hope it would be. I use actually the lightest shade because I like a brightened under eye. You can, of course, try to find one that's closer to your skin tone if you don't want a brightened under eye. This is just my way of doing makeup, so I use the shade 110. But yeah, the Milani Conceal and Perfect, I think it's great for dry or oily skin, and it has good coverage, and I really like it. So that's your foundation concealer. Again, have a good moisturizer. I don't really think that you need a primer. Moving on to powder. And of course you'll see these in action, but I just wanted to kind of take the time to show you what I'm using. For powder, for under my eyes and also my face, I love to use the Maybelline Fit Me Powder. Now, technically for my style of makeup, which is a little extra, I do tend to like to use 2 different shades of this, which I understand is not maybe the most beginner friendly style. You could just find a translucent powder at the drugstore. I don't know if Fit Me makes one or not, but truly I love this powder. So I use one that's lighter for under my eyes. So I'll use the shade 10 or even the shade 5. And then depending on how tan I am at the time, I may use shade 20 for the rest of my face. So again, sorry that I'm recommending something that is 2 different shades. That's not very fun, but I do think it's worth it. However, again, if you do not want your under eye area to be brighter, then you can use the same powder for your entire face. So just keep that in mind. And in fact, a lot of you who might be beginners at makeup may not feel the need to actually do like a brighter under eye anyway. So just giving you some options. Okay, so next, complexion wise, I really recommend a setting spray. This is a travel size from Urban Decay because again, you can buy the full size, but if you're not gonna be using this that often or if you're not gonna be doing the style makeup that often, you don't really need it. So all-nighter, long-lasting makeup setting spray, up to 16-hour wear. This is a tried and true. I have since bought a Charlotte Tilbury setting spray that I also really love, but this one I have used for absolute years. Like literally, I would say over a decade now. It's very good, and the travel size is like 15 bucks. So I do think that you're gonna need that for a night out, especially if it's prom and you're like dancing and stuff. Let's see, for the rest of the complexion, I have a bronzer and highlight and blush recommendation. Now, I wanna give you 2 options for bronzer. Sorry, I should have been prepared. One of the bronzers that I really love that is technically drugstore pricing but still kind of expensive is the ones from Morphe. These are really good. I especially get so much use out of this one. It's the Glamour Bronze in the shade Icon. This is just their oldest packaging. Now they come in this black packaging. I have a darker shade called Megastar. This is pretty dark though, so I only use like a tap of this unless I am very tan. So I do love this bronzer. It's $19. If you can find just one that is your perfect shade, like if you're my skin tone right now or lighter or maybe a shade or 2 darker, you can probably get by with this Morphe Icon shade. Otherwise, I do think that most people would enjoy this Nars bronzing powder in the shade Laguna. Let me open this up so you can see what the shade looks like. Now this product is another mini, which I think is great. Again, if you're not going to be using it consistently, like every single day, although you might want to if you like it enough. This is just like a medium toned bronzer that typically works for most people who are not very deep skin toned. So those are a couple options for you. And then for blush, I think this Milani range is really nice. Again, where I could, I wanted to pick drugstore items. So this one is in the shade Romantic Rose. And I think if you are, and I am kind of grouping beginners into a category here that you might not necessarily fit into, but I think a lot of people who don't wear a lot of makeup on a daily basis, they don't really want to be like heavy blush wearers. They don't want their blush to be like the first thing that you notice. Now, if you're me, I love a punchy blush, and after I put this type of shade on today, I might go back in with something on top because blush is everything to me. So this one though, in this style, Milani Rose powder blush. They do have multiple shades. I, again, picked up Romantic Rose for more of a natural, like, flush to the cheeks. So I do think that one a lot of people would like. And then the highlight pick that I chose from the drugstore is the Maybelline Master Chrome Face Studio. They do have a few shades of this, but the one I die for is this Rose Gold Molten. This is absolutely stunning. So I think that this formula is really good, and it's about $9.99. Okay, so moving on to eyes. I picked out a palette from Sephora that I think a lot of people would really like. Now, you could go to Morphe and get even an more inexpensive palette. You could go to ColourPop at Ulta. ColourPop has some decently inexpensive palettes. I picked up the Natasha Denona Mini Nude palette. This has 5 eyeshadows in it, $25, which isn't that bad. I think it'd be really nice for a night out, especially because you do have this deeper brown shade, but you're really not getting into like a black or something very dramatic. These are the shades here. You could definitely create like a daily look with this, or move it or transition it into a night out. So this is my pick, and that's what I'm gonna be basing the look off of in this video. For eyeliner, I really think a pencil eyeliner, either black or brown, would be a good pick. I found this little mini at Sephora. This is the KVD Cake Pencil in the shade Kitten, this is a Kitten Mini in the shade Trooper Black. It's just a black eyeliner that we're gonna smudge out. Again, you can pick a brown if you don't wanna do a black. I do think, however, a black is great for like a night out, will really make your eyes pop. And you have to keep in mind that when you're doing makeup that's going to be photographed, you do want to put on more than you typically would. So of course you're gonna put on more than you typically would on a daily basis because it's a night out and it's an event. But while you're putting on your makeup, keep in mind that when you are taking pictures, when you're wearing like a black eyeliner, for example, when you're wearing maybe a heavier blush or more dramatic eyelashes, those things in photos are not necessarily going to look super, super dramatic versus if you try to tame it down too much, and then it won't show up in photos at all. So I chose a black for this look. Speaking of lashes, I did choose a pair that I love to wear on a daily basis. And this is a pair right here. This is the Ardell Demi Wispies. And we're even going to be cutting these a little bit before we apply them. And then the lash glue that I purchased is Duo. This is one that I used to use all the time. It's from the drugstore. I think it's like $6 or $7. And very easy to apply to your lash band, and it does last really well. So there we have that. For eyebrows, you can go one of two ways. You can be a little bit extra, like I will be being today, and use a brow pencil. I really like this one from Benefit, although you can find a similar one from NYX or NYX Cosmetics at Ulta. I do like this Precisely My Brow Pencil from Benefit. They have some good shades. This one in the shade 5 matches my very dark hair very, very well. However, I use a brow pencil because I barely have hairs. I want to, or feel like I need to, add definition with a brow pencil. Whereas if you have thicker brows or you already like the shape of your brows, I know my sister-in-law Brenda, her brows, she does not, in my opinion, need to do very much at all to them. So what I suggest is a brow gel, a colored brow gel specifically. So this is from Benefit. It is a little mini. It is the Gimme Brow Brow Volumizing Fiber Gel. And I want to show you this little before and after picture. So this is obviously before, and then you can see after. So this girl already has great shape and thickness, but this brow gel with the shade, with the color in it, will add some definition, like enough definition. This is all Brenda, at least, is going to need. And I bet a lot of you who have not, you know, overplucked your brows like me, you probably just need a product like this. And then for lips, I really wanted to leave it up to what you want to do. I need, again, my personal preference, I need to use like a lip liner and really define my lips, and then I'll go in with a lipstick, and then I'll go in with a gloss. I think for a lot of people, just a gloss would be really nice. Or you could go in with your favorite lipstick color and then a gloss on top. But doing the whole liner, lipstick, gloss, I don't know if most people would care to do that or need to do that. So I just have a gloss to suggest here. This is my favorite Maybelline Lifter Gloss, again from the drugstore. This is in the shade Sand, and I love this formula. I love the sparkles in this. It's very comfortable, it's very juicy looking, and it's a really good one. And that is all of the products that we're going to be talking about. So now that we have your shopping list ready to go, let's get started with the makeup. So the first thing that I'm going to do is use my concealer as my eyeshadow primer. I do suggest you starting with your eye makeup first, because if you get a little messy or things get a little out of hand, it'll be very easy to clean up and just less for you to worry about. So I'm going to apply this, not too much. Let me zoom in here so you can try to follow here. Typically do like a little there and then a little on the brow bone. Now for this, you could use your finger. I have longer nails, so it can be a little cumbersome to blend that out with my fingers, or you could use a beauty sponge. It's up to you. I'm going to be using a brush. If you're curious, and you certainly, this is not like an occasion where I think you need to go buy a whole bunch of brushes, but I will mention what brushes I'm using just in case you are wanting to do that. This is a Rare Beauty concealer brush from Sephora, and I know this is so extra, but I use this pretty much only for applying my eyeshadow primer, but it does work really well for that. And I'm taking it all the way up to my brow. Even if it gets on your brow a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm also bringing it all the way in here into my inner corner. Okay, so that is on. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the powder that I mentioned earlier, the Fit Me powder. I'm gonna open the lid and dump some of this powder into the lid. See, I have it here. And I'm going to take another brush and just get a little bit of that, tap it off so you're not caking yourself. And then I'm going to set what I just did. This is going to make it way easier to apply your eyeshadow, and it's not gonna be too sticky. One tip that I will recommend is that right before you use this brush to apply the powder, make sure that there aren't any creases on your lid, because depending on your eye shape, the concealer may crease. See, I'm kind of like holding my head up, like keeping my eyelid flat. And that way you are setting down the concealer and not setting down a crease. You don't want to permanently have a crease there because you set down a crease. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so my eyeshadow base is ready to go. And just like that, we can start with eyeshadow. By the way, the brush that I used for that, you really can use anything, I can't stress that enough, but this is a setting brush from Real Techniques. You can find this at Ulta or Target. Okay, so again, for eyeshadow, I am basing my look off of this palette. However, I'm not going to be actually using it because it is a gift. So if you buy this and your eyeshadow doesn't turn out exactly like mine is here, color-wise, just know that I'm not actually using this palette, but I am going to be basing the look. Okay, you get it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is grab a brush like this. There are so many brushes on the market that you can buy. This one is actually from Sonia Kashuk, which is found at Target. It is just a fluffy brush. Mine has a little bit of a taper right here, but that's not incredibly important. This is how big it is. It's not massive, but it's not small. And the first thing I'm gonna do is go in with this shade. It's kind of like a caramel brown. I'm gonna pick some up on my brush, more like the side, not so much on the tip. And I'm going to start placing that on the outer corner, and I'm tapping. And notice I'm keeping my eyes kind of open, like I'm squinting a little bit here, but I'm not closing my eye completely. It's okay to keep your eye a little bit open. And then once I get to this crease area, I'm going to start going back and forth right over the edge. Kind of like a windshield wiper motion right on the edge just to blow it out a little bit. So you have something like that. I'm gonna take a little more on the edge and I'm gonna go in a little bit here. I can even go on my lid a little bit. Kind of just wanna blow this out, blend this out, but mostly in the crease like that. So now you have something like that, very easy. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Kind of tapping it first. And then when I get to the top here, going over the edge with some swiping motions. Okay, so now we have that one shade, it's in the crease, and it is a little bit on the lid, but mostly we concentrated on the upper crease area, just like that. So now we're gonna take the same brush and we're gonna go into this deepest shade here. And for this, you wanna take a little at a time. So if you can tell, I just dipped it in like this twice. So it's more on the tip of the brush here. And I'm gonna go on the farthest corner. See how much that shows already with just a tiny bit of product, because it is a dark color. And I'm kind of just patting that on. And then you can go back in as necessary and grab more once you're feeling more comfortable. But you wanna keep it on this lowest part and a little bit out at the edge. And you can just keep wiggling that back and forth until you feel comfortable. This dark definition is going to add a lot to your look, and it's really gonna take the eye look to more of an evening vibe versus if you just had that one shade in there. So you have something like that, and we're gonna do the other side. Now, if you feel like it's looking a little harsh, like on the corner like that, you can go back into the first shade and just go along the edge. So not over the entire thing, but see how that's helping blend it out? And then you can do your swiping back and forth motion, keeping it low, keeping it right in this area, not getting too high up, and just going back and forth until it starts to blend out. You can also do like little circular motions that can help buff a little bit. And it just softens it a little bit. And then just trying to go back and forth to both sides to try to make it even. Add a little more dark brown, add a little bit more of the first color. Just try to make it as even as possible, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Okay, so now you have something like that. 2 eyeshadows, simple, but even if we stopped here, it still looks like a night out. So now we want to use some of these shimmer type shades. So I'm going to go in with a shade like this. It's kind of like a coppery, sparkly shade. And the best advice for sparkle shades that I can give is just to use your finger. You can also use a flat brush. Sonia Kashuk has some as well. This one is from Smith Cosmetics. It's a 253, but I will have to use both my finger and this, again, because of my long nails. But I'm gonna start with my finger and I'm just going to press and kind of swipe down on my lid. I'm not going to in here yet. We're gonna do a different shade there, but I wanna just press this down and I can pick up some more as I need to. And don't be afraid to go up into the crease a little bit, especially if you have hooded eyes. Using your finger with a glitter or shimmer shade will just give so much more pigmentation than using a brush. Okay, so now let's do the other side. So I know the lighting is not absolutely perfection, but that's kind of what we have here. And now we want to go in with a light shade. I want to go in with this. It's kind of like a champagne type shade. And again, I do suggest going in with your finger if you can, but if you have long nails, you can go in with a smaller brush. And for this shade, we're going to concentrate it right at the corner. And it's just going to blend into that other shimmer shade that we put down. Like that. All right, and the hardest part of the eyeshadow is done, believe it or not. All right, so now let's move on to eyeliner. Again, I'm using a black pencil liner, and this is gonna be easier than you think it's gonna be. So you are going to start very close to the lash line, about halfway over, and you can start kind of tapping it, or you can do a line, but I'm trying to be very small with my movements so things don't get out of hand. Especially with creamy liners, it can start to look a little thick, a little fast. So I'm just doing little tiny motions, and notice that it's looking jagged. It is not looking smooth. It is not looking like perfected, but that is okay because we're going to fix it. Okay, so I didn't even go all the way over to here. I really just stopped where my lashes are most obvious, and I got a little thicker on this outer corner. So now, moving right in, Sonia Kashuk makes a nice itty bitty little brush like this. I don't think it just says Petite Smudge. And I'm going to go right on top of that liner and just gently, but not too gently, like I am pressing, kind of go on top to smudge it out just to the point where the liner edge doesn't look as jagged anymore. And you do want to do this one eye at a time because the liner will set down and then you won't really be able to move it as much. And then if you want to go back in and, oh, I kind of smudged this a little bit too much, you can go back over it with the liner and add back in that definition and smudge it again. It's really up to you. This is 1,000 times easier than doing like a wing liner with like a liquid or a gel. So I really suggest this for beginners. And then you have kind of like this smoky edge that will be great for a night out when you're wearing lashes, especially. So I suggest this method, and we're already done with that eye. So I'm gonna go on to the next one. I'm even doing it a little bit like on my lashes. That's how close to the lash line that I want to make it. Okay, so you should have something like this. Now, and something I didn't mention is mascara. You definitely need to have a mascara for this look. One that I actually have been liking is from Maybelline. This is the Lash Sensational Sky High Mascara. But because I do recommend lashes for an event, you do not have to really care what mascara you're using. You just want to get your lashes coated and black. So just do your mascara like you typically would. Okay, so now while the lashes are drying, the mascara is drying, I'm going to show you how to apply these lashes. So again, these are Ardell Demi Wispies, and what I suggest you using is your fingertips or tweezers. I like to use tweezers. I also have a lash glue, and I will be using little scissors. You can also use like fingernail clippers or any scissors that you have. And first things first, I'm going to remove these gently from the container, and I just take the corner and I pull them off and then do it on the other side. I like to pull from this outer corner like that. So now that the lashes are off, I'm gonna try to get close here and show you exactly what I recommend. First of all, if there's any little clear glue that's obvious, you can peel that off really gently. You don't have to, but sometimes the clear glue can be a little clumpy in some areas. Sometimes it's not necessary at all. Okay, so now that that's off, my goal here is to mostly accentuate the second, or the outer half, I should say, of my eye. Therefore, you can use the entire strip for your entire eye. However, when I, in my experience, cut the lashes and make them a little shorter, my lashes are so much more comfortable throughout the entire day, entire night. They stay on so much better, and they're easier to apply. So you don't have to do this, but this is what I suggest, and this is what I do every single time I wear them. So because I want to accentuate the outer part, and in case you didn't notice, these lashes, they're shorter in the inner corner and they're longer on the outer corner. So going from the inner corner, I want to remove a couple of these. Let me try to show you here. I want to remove a couple of the little lashes. So I literally am going to cut off 2 little sections basically. So this is what I have left. So I'm going to set that down. I'm going to do the same thing for the other lash. So again, just want to make them even. So I'm taking 2 little things off and I'm going to set these down. Now I'm going to take the first lash and try to keep them positioned in a way that you know which lash goes on which eye. Again, it's going to be shorter on one end and longer on the outer. So just try to keep them set up to where left is on the left, right is going on the right. Then you're going to take your lash glue, and because it has this convenient tip here, you're going to just paint. You're going to paint just sort of a generous line of glue. You want it to be thick enough to where you can see it, but not thick to where it is like gooping everywhere. And this is really important. You want to hold this and you can blow on it, but you really want to wait about 30 seconds at least, because if you go to put this on your lid or your eyelashes right now, they're going to slip and slide and be a nightmare, and you're going to be frustrated and you're going to wonder why this is so hard, and it's really not. It's just that the glue has to get sticky. So again, I like to blow on it. I like to wait about 30 seconds, even a minute. The most important thing is there is a sweet spot for your lash glue being not too slippy and slidey, like you want it to be sticky, but you also don't want it to dry on the lash band to where it doesn't stick anymore. So not saying that to make you nervous, but you do want that sort of sweet spot of, okay, it's still there, I can still see it, because when it dries, it'll be completely clear, you won't be able to see it. So you want to still be able to see it, but you want to have waited long enough to where it is sticky. Okay, once you have waited that amount of time, you want to go above your lashes. You can use your forehead, like kind of rest like that. And again, you don't have to use tweezers. You can use your fingers if that's easier. But you want to concentrate on setting the middle part of the lash down on your lid right above your lashes. And if you've waited long enough, it should stick down and you still have some time to maneuver. So then I go to the corner, the outer corner, and I pulling the lash, press that down. Again, I'm pulling the lash and pressing it down. And then I'm going to the inner corner and I'm pulling the lash and I'm pressing that down. And if you've waited long enough, you should be able to let go of it and it stick down. But especially for this inner corner, I like to kind of go back and keep pressing it down onto the lid to make sure that it is secured, to make sure that it is still sticking and is not starting to pop up, because this is a vital time to make sure that it is starting to be actually glued and is not, you know, if you just get up and walk away, it may not have completely secured itself. So then you have that, and you can really see how much that amped up your look just by adding this little strip lash. You might want to try to practice a few times before your event just to make sure that you kind of understand what the concept is. But I'm telling you, if you do that step of making sure the lash glue gets sticky and dries down a little bit, this will be amazingly easier than if you just start to like press it on. So now while that is still drying, I mean, you can see a little bit of the glue, But while that is setting down, we're gonna do the same thing with the other lash, and I'm gonna show you again. So painting this on the lash band. Generous enough to where you can see it, not glooping or globbing. And now we wait about 30 seconds to a minute. Okay, so now we're doing the same thing, concentrating on the middle part there. Sticks down, go to the edge and set it down right above the lashes. And then we're going to the inner corner and setting it down right above the lashes. And then I love, like you saw me do over there on the left eye, I like to go over and just grab the lashes and push, grab the lashes and push to make sure that it's stuck to my skin. So notice on the inner corner of my eye, there is no false lash. This is my real lashes right here and right here. And that is what's going to make wearing these so much more comfortable, because often if you especially are a beginner with lashes, this inner part can be poked by the lash band. It can just be like make your eyes water, start to lift on your eyes. It can really change a lot about how you wear your lashes if you have that inner part covered, basically. So that's why I like to cut them. Again, I cut so little off that you really don't have to, but I get the most enjoyment out of my lashes when I cut the band like that. Now, one thing that you can do is, number one, bring your lash glue with you in your bag if you are insecure about maybe the lashes coming off in any capacity. The other thing that you can do though is pull, using your tweezers or using your finger, pull down the inner part of your lash band and actually go on top with a little bit of glue. You can actually, I don't need to, but you can actually reinforce them that way and then let that dry, and then you're really reinforced. Your lashes will not move at all. The other tip I have is, if you can see on this eye, you can, maybe you can see, maybe you can't, but if there's any glue that is showing, you see like a shininess, you see any white glue, you see like any sort of thing that looks like, oh, my eyeliner didn't fully cover the lash band, you can take your pencil and go on top of the lash band, right where you see any of that lash glue, and just paint basically over it, pencil over it, to fill in any that you're seeing. So I don't know if you can tell, but that looks a lot more finished. And I'm gonna do it over here as well. Because even though the lash glue dries clear, it still can have a little bit of a texture look to it. It can look, like I said, shiny or white, or in some cases even like iridescent blue. And so you can always go back with your pencil and adjust. And then lastly, I don't do this on an everyday basis, but I think for an event it is a nice touch. You can go back in with your mascara and make sure, and you can make sure that you are coating your lashes again. This will help your lashes look very natural, and it will also blend your natural lashes to the fake lash so that it all looks cohesive. Like that. All right, now the hardest part of your makeup is done. Well, likely the hardest part of your makeup is done. So let's now move on to the face, which we will be finishing up the lower lashes area, but let's move on to the face. Okay, so we already moisturized, so technically our base is set, or if you want to do your primer, you can do that. Going in with foundation, I am going to be pouring some of this Maybelline Fit Me on the back of my hand. Obviously, if you have a foundation that you like, then just use that. You do not have to go buy a new foundation. Now, there's two application techniques that you could use. You could use a brush, or you could use a sponge. If you are using a beauty sponge, a beauty blender, a Real Techniques blender, one of these like knockoff sponges that I really love. e.l.f. makes a sponge that's very popular. You do want to get it soaking wet under the faucet multiple times. Soak, 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 squeeze and soak, squeeze and soak, and then wring it all the way out. And your sponge should be much larger than it started, and it should be like nice and fluffy like this. Don't have water dripping out of it, but it should feel damp. Okay, this is how I like to apply my foundation. It is much easier just to use a brush, so do what you feel comfortable with, but I'm going to use a sponge. And then I'm going to pick some off, and most of you probably know how to apply your foundation, but you can watch me just in case you want to try out the way I do it. This is a little dark. I might have to pour a lighter color in to get a better match. Now you want to make sure too that you get like all the way under here and even a little bit like behind your ear. You don't want to stop just right here at your jawline, especially if your foundation is not an absolutely perfect match. You definitely don't want to neglect these areas because it will be obvious. You also want to go all the way up a little bit into your hairline so that it doesn't look like there's a stopping point. Okay, once you have that all over and a little bit down your neck, we're going to move on to concealer. Now, if you do not typically wear concealer, or if you don't feel like you need it, don't wear it. You don't have to do any of the steps that you don't want to do just because I'm doing them. For me though, of course, I am extra. I'm going to be using the same concealer we use to prime our eyelids. And the way I'm going to apply this is like right here. Like that. And you can do a little bit over here as well. Use as little as you can, and you can always add to it. Since I've been doing my makeup for a long time, I kind of already know how much I need. Start out with a couple dots and see if that's enough for you. You can always add to it before you do powder. You can use a concealer brush, or you can use the same sponge. And starting with the tip, you can just start dabbing this out. And although I did not do it here, I do suggest working one eye at a time, because some concealers, not necessarily this one that I'm recommending, but some concealers can can set down to where it'll be hard to blend. So I do recommend you working one eye at a time. Okay, so then you have that. And I don't really put it anywhere else. I just make sure that that's blended out. And then we're going to go in with our loose setting powder. So you should still have some in the lid from earlier. And this is a very important part of setting your under eye. You can do one of two things. You can take a setting powder brush and set under your eye with the powder, or you can take the same sponge and use the powder to set underneath. Here's what's important. You want to make sure that you get out any creasing before you start setting. Just like we did on the lid, you don't want to set a crease. And this is why it's also important to use as little concealer as possible. And then I picked up some powder here, more than you would think that you need. And I'm going to press all the way under exactly where I put that concealer. And it might look like too much powder, but this is going to give you a really perfected under eye. And as I keep saying, but I want to keep saying it, modify this routine to your preferences. If this is too complicated, if this seems unnecessary, if you really don't want to be this extra, you don't have to be. Do what makes you feel beautiful and confident. But this is how I feel confident with my under eyes looking very smooth and perfected. I press that powder in all the way under my eyes and I get a very smooth, perfected look, which I like. Then you can use the same powder, but you can see that powder that I used is a decent amount lighter than the rest of my face. So this is why I typically go in with another shade. Once again, you don't have to do that, but I like to go in with another shade. And for this step, you can actually use the same sponge and go in to the powder and start pressing it all over your face. I also brought out a big fluffy brush that you could also just dust around on your face if you want to do that. I will say though, pressing powder with a sponge or with a little like beauty puff will give you the longest wearing makeup possible versus using a brush to just kind of dust your powder around. Really pressing will make everything better. Okay, once that's done, you are ready to move on. I, at this point, like to do my brows, and I am going to kind of skip through this because I think this part is a little extra, and not everybody needs to fill in their brows with a pencil. I do have a dedicated brow video that is called how to do your brows for like thin or sparse brows, or filling in your brows for thin and sparse brows. It's an older video, but it's still quite popular. So you can always look for that one if you have thin and sparse, barely there brows that you want to fill in. I still stand by the products that I talk about in those videos. Or you can just use a pencil to fill in, and I'll be right back when I go to show you how to use the brow gel. Okay, I did my brows and now just showing you how to fill in with your brow gel. Now, the one that I'm using has a much bigger wand than the Gimme Brow that I recommended, but it's pretty much the same concept. You're just gonna take it and start feathering it through, just like you're using mascara, really. Just build it through your brows. The one that I recommended, again, the Gimme Brow, is a colored brow product, so it has some pigment in there. This one is just clear. So you will get a little bit of fill-in, a little bit of texture. Your brows will look a little bit more manicured, but they're not going to look overdone either. The other thing is they're going to last and stay in that position all day. And I just think it's important to have neat looking brows that aren't overdone necessarily, but that still look like you have effort. It's kind of weird when people do like a full eye look like this. They have their lashes done, they look, you know, all put together. And then if they have no brow product or nothing on their brows, or their brows are kind of like messy looking, it takes away from the look. So again, just my suggestion to use a brow gel for your look. Okay, so now I want to go back in and finish the eye look, and then we can finish the rest of the complexion. So next we're going to go back into that palette and using a little pencil or tiny smudge brush. You can actually use the one that we used for smudging the eyeliner. Actually, let's go ahead and use that one. I was also gonna recommend this Detail Blending. It's like a little dome one. This is the one that we used earlier. So let's use both, but you can use one or the other. Really is not that serious of a choice. And we're going to start out with actually this dark shade. And I'm going to take just a little bit of it on the tip of that brush, just a little. Start small again with these darker shades. And starting in the outer corner, I'm going to start to swipe, like rub back and forth. And I'm doing this directly on the lash line. Basically on top of your lashes. And I'm just gonna pick up a little bit more, keeping most of that pigment on this outer corner, but I am bringing it in a little bit into here. So you can see that's what I have. And now I'm going to go in with that light shade, that kind of caramely orange shade. And I'm going to go right underneath of it, right on the edge, and gonna start blending that dark shade out. Kind of fusing these two colors all the way in to this inner part. So now I have something like this. See? So again, for the other side, taking a little bit of that really dark shade and using it to line my lash line. And then with that first kind of caramely shade, going right underneath, right on the edge. Because you don't want to take away that definition that that darkest shade gives you, but you do want to blend it out. You don't want it to look harsh. So I have something like that. Now, believe it or not, all I'm going to do from here is take some mascara to my lower lashes, and I will be done for the eye look. Okay, and the eyes are done. What do you think? I think they're so honestly easy and hard to mess up, but they still look dramatic enough for a night out. They still look like probably more than what you typically do on an everyday basis, you know, going to school or whatever. So you will look like more glamorous, which I think is the point. So let's move on to the rest of the face, starting with bronzer. I'm going to be using this one from Morphe, and I like to take a fluffy brush. Again, I'm sure Real Techniques from Ulta or Target. I know they have like a fluffy powder type brush. Morphe is a brand that has a lot of inexpensive brushes that are good quality. I'm using this one that I got from Royal & Langnickel. It's an Omnia brush, but don't concentrate too much on what exact brush you're using. And I like to be kind of generous when I'm picking up bronzer, but then I tap off any excess because you don't want to go too overboard. And where I'm going to place this is right here on my cheeks and cheekbones. And what I was saying earlier about you wanting your makeup to be a little heavier than you think it needs to be especially for pictures. This is one of the products, bronzer and blush, that I think you really need to go a little heavier handed than you might typically go. Even if you're using bronzer on a daily basis, do you see how much more color and life that gives to my face? I wasn't that light-handed with it, is my point. I don't think it looks crazy heavy like in person, but I just want to urge you to use more than you think you need. Again, especially for pictures. Sometimes people do their makeup and they'll ask me like, why does my makeup not look makeup-y? And it's often because they're not using enough product. So I'm doing it on my hairline and my forehead, concentrating kind of on the sides here and here, not really like in this middle area. And I'm not ignoring this like temple area either. And I also like to take it on my neck, kind of light-handed here. I don't need this to be too pigmented looking, but it kind of blends everything together, makes you look a little more seamless than if you completely ignored your neck altogether. And I also want to take a little bit on the sides of my nose, just so my nose doesn't look like white and then everything else is kind of bronzed. You don't really have to do much like contouring, but just don't completely ignore your nose. Okay, so bronzer is on and done. Moving on to blush, I am going to be using something a little similar to the one that I picked out from Milani. It's just not the exact same shade, but how I'm going to, or where I'm going to apply this actually, is starting here and kind of pressing and pulling it back. I don't personally like to concentrate it right here, but you can if you want. The real matter is you don't want to not use enough. You can see hopefully the difference between this cheek and this cheek. It's not huge, but in person it is noticeable that I have blush on. And I suggest just keep putting some on and build it up until you feel like you like how much is there. See, I'm kind of tapping and pulling, tapping and pulling. I'm not really like buffing or swiping it. I'm kind of like tap, 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 pull, tap, 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 pull. Okay, blush is on. Now let's do that beautiful highlight. I am going to be using the same exact one because I've had this for a while. You can use any sort of like smaller brush. You could use the brush that you used for your bronzer and just use like the little side of it. I like to use like a little bit of a smaller brush just so I can be a little more detailed. And just like some of the other products, I pick some up and then I dust it off, and you will see a generous amount dust off. And the areas I want to put the highlight is right here on the very, very top of my cheekbone. You can see that showing up already. Right there. See? And then I also like to do it like right here on the highest point of my forehead. A tiny bit right here on my chin. And I will sometimes go right here on my nose as well. Just to kind of add to the glow. And you can do it as much or as little as you want. I just want kind of like a little touch of glow. And I love that highlighter. Okay, now I'm going to do lips. Like I mentioned, I do feel the need to line my lips, so I'm going to do that. And I'm gonna be using, in case you're curious, this is from Melt. This is in the shade Bare, and it's from Sephora. So I'm gonna line the outside of my lips, or the line of my lips. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with that same gloss. Again, I've had this one for a while. Now, if you want to go in with a lipstick underneath of the gloss, then of course you can do that with whatever color you want. Okay, and the last step that is very important is you want to use that setting spray. So I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury one, but I'm telling you that Urban Decay one that I recommended is also phenomenal. You want to spray your face and get it pretty wet, okay? Wetter than you think you want to get it. I like to feel that spray over every part of my face. And then you can use your hands or like a book or something and kind of dry off. And I'm serious, this will make a difference in how long your makeup lasts. Okay, and that is the finished look. This is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Brenda, I hope that this helped you and inspired you. Please, anybody, let me know if you have any questions at all in the comments. I will answer absolutely anything that you want to know. I'm happy to give more advice and more product recommendations here for you. Just let me know in the comments. Please give the video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it or if it helped you in any way. And if you follow this tutorial, if you follow this routine and you end up using it, please, I would literally die if you sent me a picture of it on Instagram or tag me or something. That would literally make this entire video completely worth my time and effort. I would love to see your recreations, and I hope that you have fun recreating this. Thank you again so much, and I will hopefully see you in my next video.